I am on my best behaviour right now because the boss is in our guest chair today. This is the Architects of Business, Joe's weekly series of interviews with leading entrepreneurs in partnership with EY Entrepreneur of the Year. I'm Tadhg Enright, and today we'll hear from Niall McGarry, the founder of JOE and its parent company Maximum Media, which makes content like this very programme across a variety of brands in Ireland and the UK. Niall, I suppose this had better go well for me, hadn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be watching closely.
Lots of the entrepreneurs who've been in and out of here and in and out of that chair, they kind of talk about having grown up on farms and all the kind of wheeling and dealing that goes with that, or in kind of country pubs and all the kind of the business acumen that goes with that, and that they learned it all from within the family unit. I mean, does that go for you as well?
No, absolutely not. My family weren't into business at all. My dad was a postman originally and then worked in what is now Air, but back then was Telecom Éireann, and fitted phones. Very, man of basic means. And my mum was a nurse, night nurse in the hospital, worked incredibly hard. I always ring her first if I'm feeling sick, but she was a nurse, so pretty non-business background. Wasn't in any of my family. Probably link a lot of it to Castlebar. Castlebar was an entrepreneurial town when I was growing up in the 90s in Castlebar, no doubt about it. A couple of great business people that were running kind of hotels and international song contests and all sorts in a town. I probably bit on that bug hard. So Castlebar, I'd say, inspired me, but wasn't in the family.
Were you dealing with those people who were running those enterprises in
No,
Castlebar?
no, not really. No, just was aware of it. Everyone was aware that Castlebar was kind of punching well above its weight as a town. Similar in size to Tullamore and Mullingar and these places. Whereas back then there was genuinely small airport. It just had different things, and I really kind of got excited by, not like, I suppose I probably felt like when I'm over in London, even with the teams, I still kind of refer to myself as urban. I was born in a large urban area, which they find hilarious, but it stuck with me. And I kind of felt Castlebar was different to other parts of Mayo, put it that way.
Okay, fair enough. And you very much dived into that wheeler dealing scene yourself, like a lot of the people who've been in and out of that chair, buying and selling in your younger years.
Yeah, as a teenager, absolutely. I definitely got into business. I don't know where it happened, 12, 13, 14, big into football, all that, big into sport, but was interested in business, probably more so than school. I was still, was fine, did well at school, enjoyed it, but I was always looking at, how can I build a business? I think I was watching some UK TV show that was on at the time, and there was some guy in it who was running the business, and I was like, oh, fancy that. He had a mobile phone and stuff like that, and this was like the early 90s.
Wasn't Dom Jolly, was it?
No, but phone is about the same size. But I got into a lot of different things. I had a car park for Connacht finals, just opened kind of a couple of the fields around the area. And I sold fireworks at various stages. Used to come up to Dublin, the bangers, rockets and air bombs, and
bring them down. I hope the guards aren't listening.
I think we're square.
Statute of limitations applies at this stage.
We're square at this stage. Sold pumpkins. Yeah, my dad he was into gardening as well as a hobby, so I was selling pumpkins. Landscaping, so I was in business with two other guys. They did most of the work. I did the marketing,
right,
in the back office. And so a combination of marketing, entrepreneurship. These are some of the things that kind of filled my teenage years.
Do you think it was ever in a plan for you to be working for someone else?
No, most certainly not. I knew that at an early age. I don't think I dealt overtly well with authority. At school, I struggled with being in the confines of a classroom for a set period of time. To this day, I struggle to go to the cinema because I didn't like the idea of going into a place and committing myself to it for 2.5 hours. It's bizarre, it's weird, but I think that's where the roots of this thing came from. So I like the idea of getting out, making my own decisions all the time, and so that there's definitely a germ of something in that in terms of, for my path to entrepreneurship, I like to set my own rules.
So, I mean, it sounds like school was perhaps not a great fit for you?
It was fine. I was very good at English. I stand over the fact that anyone listening that's going through school, English is without doubt the most beneficial subject in terms of furthering your career through being a business owner or any walk of life. Being able to communicate with people is top of the tree in terms of my priorities, what I took from school. Maths for me is can you add, multiply, subtract, divide? Yes. Can you do it quicker than most people? Yes. Do I need to know algebra? Absolutely not. So anything that's of no use to me or something I don't find interesting, I struggle with. So I liked history, I liked geography, I liked English. Didn't get to do business studies, unfortunately. I picked it, but I didn't get it in school. So a lot of subjects I was doing, like chemistry, biology, I just had no interest in. And if I have no interest in something, I'm no good at it. That's to this day the same.
Were you well behaved?
Moderately, yeah.
Moderately.
Yeah, I was a bit of a messer. I was a bit of a messer, definitely. I like having fun with people. I like having the crack, as they say. I always say that in the UK. Their version is banter, which I can't stand. So I'm using the crack. Yeah, exactly. I'm using the crack more than ever these days as a phrase, which obviously takes a bit of explaining in London. But no, I do like messing. I liked that. I like that aspect of school, obviously, because you're in with the lads and you're having fun. And there's a time where that needs to stop. I mean, I want my young fella Max to do well in school and be well behaved, but I want him to have a personality too. So I was definitely more of a messer.
Do you think, I mean, and you're probably still, in touch with them. Castlebar is not a huge town, but any of your teachers or people you went to school with, are they surprised or not surprised by what you've built?
All my friends, I mean, everyone from class knows of me. I mean, in Castlebar, I can't go home without people shouting JOE.ie, they're not shouting JOE.ie, but it's just Joe. That's what they shout at me. I wish they shouted her occasionally as well, but that might be a bit strange. But no, everyone in town, yeah, I mean, from what I've heard, people in Castlebar are as proud of Joe and her than a lot of people from Cork are of Barry's tea, etc. It has that feeling of factor. People of Mayo have claimed it, and I'm kind of happy with that. But as regards teachers, I'd say they're all retired now at this stage. Definitely there will be surprise. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Look, I was the classical school report of, Niall, he could try a bit harder. He's bright, but he could try a bit harder. And I think that was the case. So if I applied myself, but the curriculum as it was, and it hasn't changed enough. It doesn't challenge people. And
you were probably learning more in the outside world, doing your various bits and pieces, be it landscape or whatever.
Possibly, but I don't know. Was I concerned as a teenager of learning? Like again, this kind of, it's important. That didn't come from my parents. It probably came from my mum because she's rock solid. But that didn't come from anything that I need to learn every single day. Like I'm a sponge. And some people are like, if they feel they're not learning on any given day, people do degree courses and do, they go back to college, they learn and they constantly do BAs and stuff like that. That's just not for me.
But you were working hard. I mean, like you were at school, but then you were also, doing car parks.
Absolutely. And I had good values and what have you, but I wasn't obsessed with the idea of needing to learn. Was I learning through osmosis? Probably, of course, but I wasn't obsessed with it to the point that we'll say some of the more academically minded kids in my school were.
Yeah, you pursued an academic career. You were saying there, with the landscaping business, you were in the back office doing the marketing. You weren't really out there kind of mowing grass or whatever.
No.
I remember whenever I was at school and looking forward into, wondering what the hell am I going to do at college? And you'd see marketing, and I didn't actually know what marketing meant. I was like, what exactly does that mean? Did you know what it meant?
No, I did. Advertising, I was interested in advertising, was in the power of brands selling messages. Again, obviously, as a aspiring business person, I could see that, like, the idea of building, interest in something or building a brand is a key factor in more people buying it. And I think that stands to this given day in that, marketing, obviously I have a vested interest because we make our money from advertising, but ultimately the most successful brands in the world all have a top class marketing strategy. So it was something I was interested in from a very, very early age. I went on to do marketing in Limerick. And I think it's a core function of business, being able to build a brand, because ultimately that's what I've been doing all my business career thus far.
Did you learn much at Limerick?
I met Shane Filan, who's in Westlife. He was in my class.
That doesn't answer my question.
That's probably all. I learned he was in the boy band. Did I learn anything? I learned a certain amount, yeah. I mean, what I'll find is that what's taught in a 4-year degree course in marketing compared to what people learn when they go into the Diageos of this world or they go into the big drinks companies is a totally different kettle of fish. The top level marketeers all have to do a huge amount further, which usually comes from the big corporates, the big international companies. So I got a basis in it, yeah, absolutely. But I learned about life in Limerick as well. Like that was a big thing for me, because obviously I'd come from what I felt was a big town and I knew everything, and I went down to Limerick, didn't know anybody going down there, made friends, was thrown into a student accommodation where there was 10 other guys in the place on the very first night. We all had to go to the pub together, we all had to get on. So all of a sudden I started building out some lifetime relationships from then. So learned about life. Yeah, I got a certain amount obviously from college. But I learned more about how to live and how to fend for myself in the confines of Limerick.
Forge relationships.
And forge relationships, yeah, which is vital.
What about those, skills in building a company, taking it just from, a mom and pop operation or something that's just you, and turning it into something bigger? Because, Maximum Media has been on the scene for a good while now, but it still has grown really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And at a pace that would kind of intimidate some people kind of starting out. They'd say, well, listen, how do I get money for this? And how do I actually hire someone? Is that the kind of thing you learned at college? Or did you learn that just by the act of doing it?
I think that stuff comes very, very instinctively to people. I think I'm definitely one of these people who think that an awful lot of the core skills and how to scale, how to build a business, having an instinct for your industry comes naturally. Comes from the womb potentially. It comes very, very naturally. Again, I feel like building relationships definitely happened in my college years, and subsequently the power and importance of building relationships and getting people to do things for you and getting a team to get on side with you and believe in what you want to do and the vision you're trying to create. But ultimately I was born to be in the media business. I didn't know that at the time. So if I go back to all my interests, media wasn't in there, and it developed as I went on. It developed probably even more laterally after I launched JOE.ie in 2010, the idea of how to run a media business and what I wanted to achieve. But I've 100% taken to that, like that's what I was born to do, and it took me 31 years to discover that in terms of when I set up JOE. But it is what I was meant to be.
Media was your first job post university.
Yeah, it was. But I was obviously on the advertising sales side of it.
So you worked for a newspaper in Galway, isn't that right?
Worked in a newspaper in Galway. Yeah, I just saw an ad in the paper for advertising sales executive. I thought, that's a corollary of marketing, advertising. So let's go for that. I came out obviously into a booming economy, although it didn't seem like that in the west of Ireland. Jobs were tough enough to come by. I've said this many times, I actually didn't want to go to Dublin. I haven't been a Mayo football fan, and lots of uncomfortable afternoons spent with Mayo losing semi-finals and finals. I never really gravitated towards Dublin at that stage of my career. So I liked the idea of Galway. Again, it was ironically it was the fastest growing city in Europe at the time. Obviously, all built on spurious kind of credit and housing boom, but Galway was where I went there first to work in newspaper.
Lots of people from outside of Dublin don't like Dublin. Plenty of people from Dublin probably don't much like it either. Equally, there's lots who love it too, myself included. But for some people, it's not actually a choice.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I always felt I had a choice where I wanted to go. What I would caveat that is I like Dublin now a lot. I really like Dublin. I love when the UK team come over. I'm proud of Dublin as much as I'm proud of Mayo. But at the time, and I said it was just genuinely it just always seemed, it just coincided with me having lots of bad experiences, which came from sport through being a fan of Mayo football. But yeah, it's an amazing city. But I always felt I always had choices. And again, I don't know where that came from. That was not from family wealth. I was not born into family wealth. But ultimately, I felt I could fend for myself and forge a future wherever I was based. Now, subsequently, I realised that I was born in a goldfish bowl. I moved to a slightly larger one. Then I got to Dublin, and now we're talking, aquarium. And now we're up to the
what's bigger than an aquarium?
The ocean of London and the ocean of the wider world. So I am aware that as I shifted from all these into these different areas, that I would say I probably honed my skill set. So if I was to go back, would I do it the exact same? I think I would, because I honed my skill set in a small micro economy like Galway when I set up my first business.
Well, that business, Impact Media, just a year after you finished college, isn't that right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, you were there, you took the job in the newspaper.
Yeah.
And is that where you kind of saw the ingredients for that first business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was dealing with lots of business owners in Galway who, at the time were spending ridiculous amounts of money on advertising, and they didn't realise it. So I often go to some of my clients and go, do you know how much you're spending on advertising? And one client in particular, a guy called Joe Carl, who owned a music store called Tadhg, there was 5 of them in Galway at the time. Music stores existed back then, believe it or not. This is around 2002, 2003. And he has spent 120 grand on advertising. And I said, well, imagine if you planned that. He had no idea what the results, because he would ring me on a Tuesday and try and get an ad in the paper on a Wednesday morning. The ad would be in the back of the paper. It would look shit. It would have no brand strategy. And ultimately the results would be poor. And I said, Joe, look, if we sit down and we planned out this 120 grand, I'll take 15%, and I guarantee I'll get more advertising, but I'll make sure that the posters in your window, the newspaper ads in the paper, and the radio ads will all have a commonality in terms of theme. And that's what Impact Media was.
Why did it take you to say that to Joe? I mean, why was there not somebody else saying that to Joe already?
Because it's like everything. Where do business opportunities come from? There's always somebody not doing something. And I was straight in there and spotted the gap. And again, that's a huge part of business. Like a lot of people who go, look, I'll do this thing that someone else is doing, I'll do it better. You're better off if you can find gaps that are completely there to be exploited and then do them as well as you can. But get so far out in front of people that people find it hard to catch you. So why wasn't there anybody? That's business. That's the opportunity.
And you saw that within a year. So how did you start building what became or what was Impact, which ultimately led you to Maximum? Yeah,
so ultimately had a lot of clients kind of lined up before I left my job, finished in the Galway Independent, which is now defunct sadly, where I was working. And I had a lot of clients lined up and said, look, I'm going to charge you a retainer fee. We're going to manage your marketing, and we're going to design your brochures and your newspaper ads, and write your radio ads and so on and so forth. There was a gap for a kind of a marketing agency, advertising agency in the west of Ireland. And I think, I had a good number of clients lined up, and then I built that quickly. Then we moved into brochures because, again, there was so many housing developments that needed brochures. Developers were doing well. They paid well at the time. And we got into that, and then we started building websites for brands. That was just a ocean of opportunity, if we go back to the water motif again, because everyone was transitioning. Digital was becoming a thing. Online was becoming a thing. We're still dealing with dial-ups at home, but people at work in offices now had DSL kind of facility broadband level. So it wasn't too bad. People were kind of able to use the internet to a decent... This is around 2005, 2006. So I was like straight in on that. We brought in web designers and web developers, built that. And then we grew up the business to quite a sizable amount, maybe 22 staff. We're turning maybe 1.5 million fees. I was in my 20s, driving a nice car. It all felt very good. It felt easy. I've talked about this before as well. It felt easy. Business felt easy because there was this huge, as I said, debt that would kind of spurious debt that was injected into the Irish economy like a drug, and everybody was sucking on it. And I suppose from our perspective, our business took advantage of that. We didn't knowingly know what was going on. I wasn't reading the Financial Times to see about this impending collapse, but I genuinely thought business was easy.
The thing I find interesting though about that aspect of the story is that there was the man from Zhivago spending 120 grand in advertising and not getting the right value from it. Would that have happened if he had a few music shops in Dublin? I wonder, were you filling the gap that basically, there wasn't that sophisticated advertising product available locally in the West?
No, I don't think so. I think what we were trying to do was bring a consistency to his messaging. He had no consistency. And if you look at all the big global brands, even if we think of classic ads from the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, these classic TV ads. So all the top global brands have a strategy when it comes to marketing. Why not apply it to local businesses? That essentially was my pitch to people. At the time, I was the creative head. I was the sales guy. I was the copywriter. I was doing everything. And again, this is where I felt that talent. So that being going back to school, that ability to understand and speak and comprehend the English language, actually allied to a creativity, which again, as I said, they don't get creativity out of you in school. There's not enough ways and mechanisms to get creativity out of creative people. I had that in abundance, and I was able to pour it out onto a page. So we were doing ads for Goa taxi companies, like for Goa taxis, and I had a full page ad in the newspaper. The top picture was go to work in a 3-piece, and there's a guy in a 3-piece suit going to work. And then there was like go out in a 2-piece, so he had the jacket off, and now he's out socialising, but get home in 1-piece. And it was like with Goa taxis, and it was just that kind of stuff, that creativity kind of just flew out of my brain and got it down the page, and we're able to make money out of it.
Is there a danger of being a bit unfair on schools in terms of how they kind of foster that creativity? I mean, how do you go about it? How should they, in your view, be going about it?
I think the whole thing needs to be started from scratch. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. There's a fundamental goodness in a lot of things that we grew up in Ireland, right? There's a fundamental goodness in being born and raised a Catholic, right? There's a goodness in that you learn 10 Commandments, for instance. There's a good basis to all that. What's happened is the Catholic Church have driven people away from religion because of the abhorrent way that they ran their society and their group. If you look at the school system, there's a common basis of good, solid education at school, right? So every Irish person benefits from that compared to an awful lot of global countries, don't get me wrong. But specialisation at secondary school is vital, and there's not enough done of it. So I would look there at, bringing in an awful lot of genuine specialists into a variety of different areas. And I would also say that, 8 subjects is just too tight, or 8 or 10, too tight a sphere. I mean, there's people who could come into me and they could work in social media all their lives. Nothing from school is going to help them in that. And so I think we have to catch up with the pace at which technology is changing the world. And I think that's a big, big change. But far be it from me, I'd need 2 hours to explain the rest of my thoughts.
We haven't got that long. So Niall, where did you get the vision from Joe?
So around 2008, 2009, as I mentioned, broadband was becoming more and more of a thing. People were starting to get to their homes. We were moving away from the old, dial-up connection speeds. Slowly, it was slowly. And then I'd also saw that a couple of my mates had smartphones, the original iPhone and so on and so forth. And I was kind of going, wow, this is really going to, because there's been a lot of false dawns in digital, right? So if you look at Blackberries were at the original iterations of Blackberries, they were going to revolutionise, and we were going to get the internet on your phone. You actually tried it, and it was just terrible user experience. So the smartphone revolution was there, and I kind of felt, right, there's an opportunity here to create something digital. But the first idea, the first part of the journey came from that I was looking at a lot of brands globally who needed to talk to, international brands that were talking to an Irish audience, and they wanted to talk to men exclusively. Who would they use? So, essentially it was like red top newspapers, and it wouldn't have necessarily felt that was a great experience for them. So I kind of felt an opportunity here to create something for men. So the Heinekens and Jamesons and the, Dove for Men's and Lynx's of this world, they want to talk more exclusively to men than women. There's an opportunity to create a brand in that space, and it was going to be digital, because I was never going to create a magazine. I mean, this is 2009, 2010. Would I have made more money in the early days in 2010 when we launched from the magazine? Probably, because people would have understood it. As I said, digital was in a strange way in Ireland in that stage. Yes, there was broadband in people's homes, but the actual market was really, really poor.
Some people find it perhaps strange, though, that here you have, you were an ad man, an ad salesman, creating a journalistic product. And did that ever feel like a little bit of a mismatch to you?
No, because I only did ad sales for a year. Ultimately, I'm one of these people, like everybody, you hire in expertise. You can go into any one area. I was reading a lot of The Guardian at the time. The Guardian had a very, very good way of covering sport. They used to do things like Small Talk, or they used to do things like their transfer rumour mill was like really, really funny. And a lot of the tone and wit that we were getting from that, I was like, oh my God, that's exactly the tone of Joe. So for instance, if it was, some of the dummy home pages of Joe, it was like, an interview with Ronan O'Gara, and it was like Ronan O'Gara on Ireland's Six Nation chances, Munster's strategy, and what he really thinks of lampshades. There was always like a twist in the personality. So again, I'm a fussy person, so I only like certain things. I only like certain types of content, certain types of TV show. So I tried to do that at the start and try and, can this product satisfy this fussy person in me? Ultimately, we got off to a decent start. Could we got off to a better start? Absolutely. Did I have a bag of cash? No, because it was 2010. I mean, I can't. Ireland was Chernobyl-esque in terms of economic potential then. It was a wasteland.
Media, the ad market will have had the arse fallen out of it. And
Absolutely.
Here you are launching, a new internet content brand.
Yeah.
So I was people saying you were nuts.
I was running Impact Media at the time, and I kind of had this saying in my head, like, I need to start dealing with the O2s of this world rather than the O'Tools, because at the time the O'Tools weren't paying me. It was that simple, and I was good at building brands. So when I go back to Impact Media, I'd go into the supermarket in Galway, and the grandmothers behind the counter working there would know me from the paper, because I was good at building the Impact Media brand. But ultimately it was a business-to-business marketing company, which she couldn't really benefit from, or her knowing it couldn't benefit me. So I said, I need to build a proper brand. So I was able to kind of ally my skill sets in building a proper brand, which is what we've done. And then I had a very, very good understanding of what content was going to work. But it was nuts to do it in 2010. There's no doubt about that.
But it's worked.
But it was nuts, but it was probably the best opportunity. But
so
everybody
those people who told you it was nuts, were they? I mean, they were wrong. But you were kind of saying they were right.
Unashamedly wrong. But like that, I think every entrepreneur will tell you, you can't look. A lot of people ask me about mentorship and this and that and the other. I am someone who I seek the counsel of certain people at certain times, but ultimately, if you're not able to make that decision, come hell or high water yourself, you're in trouble. And I was not going to listen to anybody. I would have been talked down off the proverbial ledge several times if I had listened to everybody in 2010, and I would have missed out on what is a life-changing opportunity of
Have
business.
you
with
taken any joy in kind of going back and seeing those people again and saying...
Not really. I mean, I said there was too
go
many. No. I'd love to see some goss, and I wouldn't be someone to rub it in people's faces. But yeah, there was people. But look, they did it from a good place. Like, they didn't do it out of badness. They did it from are you mad? You're taking on too much. Because at the time I said I was running a business which was struggling to stay above water because people were struggling to pay us.
Was it hard to be taken seriously, though? Because, Ireland certainly historically was a relatively conservative market, particularly when it comes to its media. Like, it likes its big-name newspapers, it likes its big-name broadcasters. It's kind of hard sometimes for an upstart to make an impact.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say we're only in the recent years shaking the upstart nature. Like, I mean, the upstart nature of our business is something that I hold as one of our brand values. But it probably took years to really shake that. I mean, there's an absolute outright classism in Dublin media circles. To have a brat coming up from Mayo through Galway into Dublin to create something that has an aspiration by 2022 to be the most influential media organisation in the country is absolutely goes against the grain. And it upsets people. And I upset people. And I have to get over that and I have to accept that. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a challenge in that. And it's something that I think we continually kick back against, and we're proving people wrong all the time. But I'm used to doubters.
Do you remember the first time when perhaps you sensed respect from some of the more established players?
Yeah, to be fair, I have. Yeah, there is. I mean, as I said, I think a lot of people would like to have seen us fall on their sword because we came in ultimately, and there was a lot of weird instances. A lot of people didn't believe in the future of digital, like in 2010, whereas I had to believe in the future of digital because one of the biggest things for us is we didn't have a heritage print title, heritage newspaper or magazine brand. So were held for leather in digital, and that is proven to be the best course of action for anybody.
But you're also unencumbered by the legacy costs of having that print publication, or perhaps having some people on staff from a bygone age of journalism when
totally.
actually people earned a lot of money in it.
Totally, no, I understand that, and but I also see the fact that because this print publication or whatever is then the noose around people's necks, that because it costs so much, they have to keep focusing on it. So they're in this kind of constant groundhog scenario where they've constantly to focus on the thing that costs them much. But what we've done is just had the ability to be able to go off and just focus on digital and digital only. So I do take that on board and I do understand that, but obviously that's been advantageous for us to be in that position.
Does that make growing easier, that kind of lack of being encumbered by an old newspaper, a newspaper format that would have whatever it is, 24, 36 pages and nothing more?
Yeah, no, it does. It makes growing an awful lot easier because we all know what we're doing. So when we launched Tadhg, 2 years after we launched Joe, we were able to build a social audience in that very, very quickly, because obviously building large-scale social audiences has been crucial to our success. That's why we've dropped the .ies from our brands. We're Joe and her family sports show. In the UK, we're known as Joe. We're not known. The domains have become less relevant. We're not websites anymore. We're distributed media businesses. So when we launched her in 2012, we were able to build a social audience much quicker because we understood in that 2 years how to do that. So we were able to launch her quicker. We were able, I'll talk about the idea for Joe, there's a gap in the market for men. But when I looked at the female market, none of the magazines had gravitated towards online. To this day, they don't have huge online offerings because they have got a magazine product. So we went and launched that, and her has been a runaway success. And I wanted to create an archipelago of brands rather than just be one island. And then we took sport off Joe in 2014 because the news cycle of sport is so incessant that if you're targeting men, you'll end up doing a lot of sport. Now, obviously, it's men and women these days, and you'll see that Sports Joe is evolving to kind of cover the female game just as much as the male game. But in 2014, talking to men, it was just taking up our entire agenda. So we want to talk about politics, talk about current affairs, we want to talk about loads of other things. We took sport out and built a separate vertical for that.
Yeah, I mean, in this whole, climate of #MeToo, maybe not quite that scandal, but is it a bit reductive to actually kind of separate out audiences into men and women in the way that you guys have?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point. It's something that I would say we're probably analysing. I would say that Joe has moved to a media brand that is gender neutral but has a male bias, maybe in some of the the areas of content that it covers. So there absolutely is. Do I think there's a place from a female perspective to have I don't want to say their own space, but to have content that's just for the female market? I think that has a long life ahead of it. A lot of people ask, why is there such a thing as International Women's Day? Why isn't there International Men's Day? And you go, well, the reason there's International Women's Day is we're acknowledging the persecution that women have suffered at every walk of life and every level. So it exists for a reason. And I think that there's still an idea where her can be just for women. Can guys go there? Absolutely. But is it going to cover specifically things that women are, engineered to be more interested in? Yes, but I do think Joe always had a fairly heavy female audience. I mean, at the moment it's probably about 60-40 male female. And if you look at what we've done as we've gone over the years, we haven't objectified the female form. We haven't done a huge amount of that. So we're watching that whole space.
It's important you've set yourselves up as a website target or as a service targeted at originally targeted at young men. And there is perhaps some people would have a negative stereotype about what young men are into. Yeah. I'm sure you would disagree with that stereotype. And indeed, I know a lot of the content that Joe does is aimed at kind of shattering those stereotypes. It's quite metrosexual, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
and do you think you're kind of trying to give leadership there almost?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if we boil it all down, it's a business. But on the other side, what's the opportunity to do good? So, yeah, I mean, we took a leading role in the education and awareness and creation of awareness around consent long before there was juries and court cases about this last year. Back as 2014, 2015, we took a heavy stand on that because we need to educate young men. So there's obviously good that we can do. So we obviously promote we promote the idea of people being friends with people with different sexual orientations, people with different ethnic backgrounds, that a guy nowadays should just be a normal guy who respects people for what they are, treats everything as merits. We bash stereotypes, and I think that's important, and that's been a huge benefit for us.
Stereotypes are rooted in fact. And I wonder, was there ever a meeting where you sat down and kind of said, something, do we need to do a bit more page 3?
Oh, absolutely. No. I mean, hold on a second. Stereotypes are rooted in fact on the basis of, were we born into a misogynistic society? Absolutely. Page 3 only left the Sun in 2014, 2015. Like, this is how ludicrously recently. What's that?
I think it's back.
I don't, as far as I'm aware, it's not. But as recently as that. So look, I wouldn't be surprised the way some of the elements of the world are going if it was back. But ultimately, no, I mean, men are changing. Can we help change men faster? Absolutely. So the stereotypes that this alleged kind of misogynistic roots of every young guy is born to kind of see women as sex objects, we can change that. But that's changing naturally as we become a more progressive society. Now, if we were sitting here in 2015, we'd be talking about progression, liberalism to the cows come home. Obviously, some very worrying trends. I'd like to think that there's some corruption at play that has led to some of those worrying trends, like Brexit, like Trump's, and that rise of populism. Let's just hope the whole entire human race hasn't lost the plot here, or large percentages of them. And I do think we will see that in due course.
Time will tell. Talking about Brexit, cracking the UK. You entered the UK, when was it exactly?
2015, early 2015. Had bought the domain as we were then as a website in 2014, and I remember sending out a tweet saying just bought JOE.ie and got a huge reaction of positivity, groundswell of positivity. So we've obviously set up the UK for UK guys and girls in a lot of cases now, but it's not like, I think some people had a misperception we're targeting the Irish expat community. So that was never the play. It was ultimately to try and create, there was no sam.co.uk, there wasn't a clean cut brand. And I say clean cut, i.e. that didn't delve in and out of misogyny and dodgy content, and whereas there was in the UK. So we went in with a very smart brand. We started the Irish brand at a much higher base. We had more money to invest. Like, we started the Irish company with a small bank loan. We started the UK business with 4 years of profitability in the Irish business, so and finance. So we were able to hire, I think, a better caliber of journalists from the very, very beginning, to such an extent that I would say Joe in the UK's perception values are significantly higher than the Irish brand, which is still kind of half trying to shake off its west of Ireland upstart roots, believe it or not, in a perverse type of way.
But is it, it's a different dynamic in the UK as well, because you've gone in there trying to challenge a number of established players in that field. There's a BuzzFeed, a localized BuzzFeed there. There's a Huffington Post there. In Ireland, you kind of had that kind of upstart, news website feel to your.
Yeah,
I'm not.
Look, in Ireland, we undoubtedly filled a very, very clear gap. We go back to the creation of Impact Media. It was a clear gap. There's an absolute screaming gap in Ireland. There's a huge gap in the UK. It's what people don't see. The UK is the home of the English language, yet its media scene is archaic beyond belief. And I have been sitting there in the UK satisfyingly trying to drive our bus through the huge gap in the market that was left on the mail side, for instance. Because what you had some titles are aimed at laddism and lad culture. Now, laddism, I could have been a lad when I was in school, to go back to that. That's a stage of life you go through. Do you want your dad to be a lad? Do you want to grow up to be a lad? Do you want to get married to a lad? No. So laddism is not cool. And for me, it's a stage of life that sadly a lot of young men still go through. But it's not where men, the modern British man, are. So our whole thing is we went in we're ignorant of class. And again, that's an advantage because I came from West of Ireland background where to me, everyone was the same class. Going over to the UK, where you have a class structure that is out of date, but it affects every single media operation in the UK. So we've gone in as this kind of total new way of approaching media, which is so refreshing, and what people are gravitating in their tens of millions to on a monthly basis to our platforms, because we're ignorant of class. We believe a young guy from Scunthorpe, from a housing estate in Scunthorpe, could go on to be a CEO of a company, because that's the way it should be.
It should, indeed. Let's park Joe and go back to Niall.
Yeah.
What do you think you're like as a boss?
Geez, I mean, I like to think I'm fairly sound, but I don't think everyone thinks that. I've got to accept that. I mean, the big challenge for me is we've almost 200 staff across 2 countries now, 3 offices, Manchester, London and Dublin, and I live in Galway. So I'm not hands-on, and I'm not micromanaging. What I try and do is lead by example. I probably find that's the easiest thing to do. So if we need to win a big brand or try and land a big brand here, I like to get out and get in on that myself and lead by example. I think a lot of my senior team really, really, really buy into me and buy into my beliefs and what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to achieve, because there's undoubtedly a vision there. I mean, people can say what they want. There's undoubtedly a vision there. Does everyone buy into it that have had it working for me over the last 8 or 9 years? No. And can you make them? No, because there's only going to be a certain amount of people at any organisation that will believe in what the leader is saying, and that's the reality of it.
Do you believe in making room or keeping room open for people who maybe disagree with your vision?
Oh, absolutely. In our business. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think I've joked before about the idea of in business, I like to run a benign dictatorship. And what I mean by that is I believe that ultimately on certain key decisions, it's better to be in a situation where one person can make that decision. I think that leads to better business practice. We have seen, as recently as 2016 in the UK, where democracy can lead. Democracy is flawed. Dictatorships are flawed, obviously. So what I do is we see most day-to-day decisions are taken by my senior management team. Most bad stuff that happens in the company is kept from me. I don't need to know everything. If I got to know everything, I would self-implode. So
you don't need to know that the Wi-Fi is broken.
No. But there's more serious things than that they can be kept from me. And that obviously then if it does get to me, I can kind of go, why didn't I know earlier? But ultimately, a lot of the team I have, the senior people are really, really good. I believe in them. They believe in me. It's a good two-way street. I believe that there's a work ethic needed to succeed in business. And again, I try and find people that have that work ethic. But I'm not on the ground recruiting people, which has been a challenge, because in the early days I recruited a huge amount of people. And can I get it wrong like everyone else? Absolutely. But I always feel like I can come back to myself. But recruitment is crucial because our business is so built around the individuals that we bring in. It's built around the individuals. And if you're getting an A plus in terms of their ability to do their job, then they're going to do that. They're going to bring that standard. If you bring in a D, And that's the standard you're going to have. That's the standard your client's going to feel.
Are you working as hard as you always were?
Yeah, the scary thing is I would say I'm working way harder in the last 18 months than I was 3 years before that. And that comes with the expansion into the UK. That comes from the opportunity that presents itself in the UK.
You were mentioning, though, the impact that your little boy Max has had in your life.
Yeah, yeah.
Has he made you, I suppose, set more time aside for him?
Yeah, well, ultimately, I've got a good balance in that. Living in Galway and then maybe 3 days in London a week, it sets a good balance. So, the reason I live in Galway is because of Max. Ultimately, that's where I want him to be brought up. So I've made those decisions to hop on a plane at 6:30 on a Wednesday morning or Tuesday morning and fly out of Shannon, which is more difficult in the middle of November than it was in the middle of June. But ultimately, I get plenty of time outside of work. But in terms of the business we're in, it's very hard to switch off. We don't run a butcher shop. We can close it down Saturday evening 6:00 and not worry till Monday morning. This is digital. It's 24/7. There's always somebody we're going to piss off, from an end user perspective, and there's loads of people we're going to make happy. But ultimately, we are, we leave ourselves open. We're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to people at any country in the world. So it's hard to switch off.
The audience is there 24 hours a day, but it's not always the same members of the audience, though, is it? I mean, it's taken in shifts, and I just wonder if you kind of what you think about the importance of actually taking some downtime. I mean, we've had people in that chair who talk about having worked 16, 17, 18 hours a day when it comes to the really intense points, and they say they regret that. They weren't getting the best version of themselves.
Yeah, no, it's very something to be mindful of. I feel like, I'm relatively young enough to still be able to see that I'm on a journey. I'm obviously 9 years in Ireland. We've built the Irish business into a phenomenal business at this stage. We do control a large degree of the market and a large part of the market, whether people like to accept it or admit it or not. And I think there's an exciting journey to see out in Ireland. As an entrepreneur, do I want to go and do other things at some stage? Potentially, but we're on a journey. The UK has a lot longer lifespan to run in terms of it's 3 years in. One of the biggest challenges I have is that Irish business is 9 years old, the UK is 3 years. One is in absolute ridiculous growth phase, and the other one is in slightly more maturing phase. And that presents different challenges and different excitements. I'm obviously more drawn to where's the upward curve. But I get plenty time to unwind. Got married last year, and as I said, probably be having children next year again and going back in. And Max is 9, so that'll be a step back. So I will have to make time. But what I'm on right now is working hard to build a future for all of those people and my own family.
So you've got, I won't call it an upward slog, but a long way to go in achieving your goals in the UK.
Yeah.
Are you going to go any further than the UK?
Yes, we are. We've got a couple of brands that we're going to bring internationally, but the business model has moved, the market has moved. We see ourselves going into 22 countries with a replica of the Irish business or the UK business? No, because that's not where the market is. You can't grow social audiences at the same rate of growth you used to be able to grow them. That opportunity, and again, I think that our business model has been get into a market, get profitable, and then move. But that takes 3 years to get profitable, and we've no private equity and backing, but we're going to take our Football Joe brand international, and there's an opportunity to build that from London because the UK is the home again of football, and we want to build a Rugby Joe brand and bring that international as well. So we're going to bring 2 or 3 elements of the Joe brand international. We might bring her across to the UK. That's something that we're looking at. But the UK is such a big market. We've so much more drilling of that well to do that I'm not looking too further than that.
Are you saying that if you have an idea for a social media business and you haven't started it yet, that the ship has sailed and you've missed it?
Yeah, I probably am saying that. Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at it, like there's once in a generational opportunities to create media brands. I mean, a lot of newspapers were created 150 plus years ago. A lot of TV stations 30, 40, 50 years ago. A lot of radio stations have a similar age profiling, and I think with digital titles, I think the opportunity was there probably between 2006 and 2016, and I think that window has closed, and it's something we're aware of. But look, that's not to say I'm not ignorant to the threat that could come. I think our biggest threat is traditional media working out digital, and that's where I probably set most of my eyes in terms of what we want to do, because ultimately what I would believe is the future of digital is traditional media done digitally. So it's not cats on treadmills, dogs on skateboards, user-generated content. The future is doing good long-form stuff. I mean, you have this whole, long-form and short-form, but we have this whole misnomer that content, which is just leveled at the millennial and Gen Z generation, which is like, attention spans are terrible. People only watch 30 seconds or a minute of content. It's not. It's a case of you've had a situation where the proliferation of smartphones means that if you're late for a coffee with me for 5 minutes, then I will watch something and I'll probably only watch, if there's a video, I'll probably only have 30 seconds to a minute. But I can go home and binge on YouTube and watch 45 minutes, or I can come to work in my car, or I can go for a run in the evening and I can listen to 45 minutes to an hour of curated stuff that I'm interested in. So what's going to happen in media is just incredibly interesting, and we're at the forefront of that. But attention spans are linked to when people can access content, not a case of that a young audience are unable to comprehend more than a minute. And it's a slur on that younger demographic, and it's completely wrong. But it's peddled by traditional media, and let them think it, because our ship will have sailed before they get to it.
Fair enough. Now, you were saying that you don't think you'll be doing this forever. Will you be doing it in 10 years' time?
This business, I don't know. I don't know. I would say no. I would say I won't be. No, because there's other opportunities. Like what I am is I'm stuck to one thing. I don't have 4 or 5 businesses. I have this business. I'm not into the thing of, you get a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs to come to me. I have these 3 businesses, and I'm like, Jesus, just stick with one, build one, and do it right. Don't get distracted. If I had, and we, had so many people come to business opportunity X, business opportunity Y, ultimately I'm at a stage where my brand is actually quite well known in Ireland. So if I was to get involved in another business and that business has an issue, I'm the one that will get the detractors, or I'll get the publicity. So I've got to be very, very careful in that. But ultimately, no, I would say that I probably won't be involved in 10 years' time in this business. Will I be running business? Will I be involved in business? Will it potentially be media businesses? Absolutely. Could I be? Potentially, you just don't know. I think a lot of people keep, saying, when are you going to just take a big paycheck and head off into sunset? And it's like this ludicrous notion that retiring at 40 is an aspiration. It's not for me. I will work till I'm 80, because ultimately I want to keep my mind active, and I want to keep my mental health strong, because that's what's steadied me well. A busy mind is a happy mind. That's the way I would look at it.
You're a bundle of energy, Niall. Do you find it hard to find people who are quite on your wavelength?
I'm hyping myself up for this. I'm not actually this frantic. I'm trying to get as much information out as I can. No, I don't. I find plenty of people.
Via the EOY network?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I obviously went on that last year, and it's genuinely the case of when I got, for me, when I got nominated for that, I actually thought this is a big deal, because I'd grown up watching the show, and then the alumni part of it is just that's the biggest thing, because you genuinely are. There's 500. It's if you're in that bundle, you're in with the top entrepreneurs in the country. Like, everyone who's been through the program has set up a really successful business, household names, and I'm glad to be part of that community. But ultimately, I do find there's plenty of people in our line of work, plenty of people working for me that are the exact same energy, or if not more. But if the energy goes, I'll go. But the energy is there in full effect, and will be for a lot longer.
It's time to get back to work.
Yeah.
Niall McGarry, thanks very much.
Thank you for joining us today on The Architects of Business. Thanks to our guest, Niall McGarry, our producer, Patrick Haughey, and all of the team here at Joe. Our programme is made in partnership with EY Entrepreneur of the Year. Go to EOY.ie to learn more about the finalists for this year. And don't miss out on past or future shows by subscribing for free on iTunes, on your favourite Android podcast app, or you can watch the show on YouTube. While you're at it, check out some of Joe's other podcasts too, including the GAA Hour, our movie show, The Big Review Ski, and Ireland Unfiltered. I'm Tadhg Enright. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.